Hello, the reason the projector isn't working is so that you can be the first person to open a new Bible, so please feel free to come and get one. I'm reading from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, verses 1 to 7, from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And he called a child whom he put among them and said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If any of you cause one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were thrown into the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of things that cause sin. Such things are bound to come, but woe to the one through whom they come."
Thank you, Alison. And if you do want to use one of them, don't be afraid to come up to the front and grab it. And the reading's on page 23, if you want to do that. Sorry, my name's Andy. I'm the other minister here. I wonder how we're all enjoying the election campaign. No, I come to church to get away from it. Don't tell me about the election campaign. Have I got any slides at all on? Oh, it's here. Brilliant. There we go. Ultimately, I guess the election is all about status and power. Who gets it and what they are going to do with it. Or at least what they say they're going to do with it. In a sense, today's reading is about power and status within the kingdom of God. The disciples have been with Jesus roughly 3 years by now, and they've recently heard him say all sorts of stuff. Remember, a few weeks ago, we were remembering him telling his disciples that if you want to have life, then you need to lose your life. And if you want to follow him, you need to take up your cross. And they're like, yeah, but here's the real question, Jesus. When you establish your kingdom on earth and when you kick out the Romans, which one of us is going to be top dog? Pick me. They're kind of like children with their hands up. Me. I want to be top dog in the kingdom. When the kingdom comes, someone needs to elect a cabinet. And these guys are keen to put themselves forward for whatever positions are coming up. And they're probably already dividing it amongst themselves in their heads. To be fair to them, this whole kingdom business is new to them. They're trying to work out the rules, and they want to figure out the pecking order. Every society has a pecking order, doesn't it? And any right-thinking person wants to be high up on the pecking order for whatever positions are coming up. That's the way we're brought up, isn't it? You want to get up there somewhere, if you can, whatever sphere you're in. And Jesus thinks for a minute and looks over to a nearby group of kids who are messing around the way kids do. Maybe there's a football around and they're just kicking it. Maybe they're just chilling. And he calls over. I was going to say, "Hey, little Rafferty," but he can't get him over here on his own steam. "Hey, little Mary, do you want to come over here for a minute?" Matthew doesn't tell her she was called Mary. I've made up that bit. Anyway, Jesus crouches down beside little Mary, maybe 4 or 5 years old, maybe a bit older, olive skin, hair a bit unkempt, thin as a rake, scabs on her knees. And he says this. He says, unless you change and become like little Mary here, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. I don't know about you, but I've heard sermons pointing out all the qualities of children that we are meant to emulate. Their innocence, the way that they trust their parents, their spontaneity, to name a few. It's as if butter wouldn't melt in their mouths. And here's the thing, if you suggested any of those things to Jesus' original audience, they would have looked at you blankly. They would have no idea what you were talking about. What do you think children were notable for in Jesus' day? Any ideas? The answer is pretty much nothing. Pretty much nothing. Children had no power, no status. They were about as low on the pecking order as it was possible to be. And that is Jesus' point. He's talking about status, not any virtue that we might like to emulate, although those virtues are good ones. It's not that they're not. He's saying that if you want power and status in the kingdom, you need to become invisible, irrelevant, head to the margins where the lowest are to be found. It's as if Jesus is trying to debunk this whole idea of greatness and status. There's no hierarchy in God's kingdom, at least not as we understand it. You are not better or more important than your brother or your sister. The disciples are not more important. You, me, we are not important. And for those who need to hear the flip side, you are not worse or less important than your brother or your sister. You have no greater or lesser value than the person sat next to you, and the person sat next to them, and the person in front of you, and the person behind you. There is simply no pecking order. It doesn't exist. If you're after power and status in God's kingdom, you haven't understood what is going on. Of course, to an extent, some of us do have power. But that is always, that is always power with, what is a theologian called David Fitch, talks about power with rather than power over. And says within the church, within the Christian community, we do power with, not power over. Not a power that seeks to dominate, to control, to manipulate, to lord it over, to put itself on a pedestal. Look at me. It's self-giving power. Power that empowers others. Power that lifts up and restores and heals and forgives. And for those of us who do, there's many here who do have a particular responsibility for leadership here in this church. That's a role, not a status thing. We do what we do because God has gifted us. and the church has called us. And it will always remain a gift and a calling. Leadership in whatever form it takes. And leadership takes all sorts of forms, not just the people out the front. Leadership is to build up the whole body. I'm preaching to myself here. Not ourselves. And of course, that's easier said than done. It's not always easy to sift out our motives when we do stuff. The desire to look good, to earn people's respect, and gratitude to build ourselves up in that sense is an ever-present temptation. Well, at least it is for me. And that's probably natural. It's there in all of us. But when that becomes the aim rather than lifting others up, then we're in trouble. I guess that's true for all of us, actually. What is my aim? What is my intention? Is it to make myself look good, or is it to actually serve, to lift the other up? And Jesus goes on, whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And then the little bit about stumbling, which we're not really going to look at in detail, but whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. I saw a tweet in the week from a guy called Mohammed Safa. He is a Lebanese diplomat who works for the United Nations. And he tweeted this. I noticed that our lovely janitor gets treated like an outcast. So I made sure to drink my coffee with him daily in front of the gate. So I was in a hurry to get to my office. So he came to my office with a cup of coffee and awkwardly goes, thank you for being my friend. I wonder who God would have me or you grab a coffee with this week. Someone who's unnoticed. Maybe someone who's treated like an outcast. Someone on the margins, invisible. Someone who's just in need. Who can we grab a coffee with? By the way, just a quick shout out to those who are on I love that picture, actually. Ian and Alison are away on holiday, but welcome. Shout out to those who do our welcome every Sunday, who are on the welcome team, who do such a great job, don't they? I know it was Colin and Lisa this morning, but thank you to all who are there outside, come rain or come shine. We're grateful for you, and that's such an important ministry, isn't it? Such a biblical ministry. About once a month, I man the desk at Baby Plus. One of my highlights of the week when I do it, actually. And one of the things I've set myself a target to do is to try and learn the names of all the children who come regularly. I struggle with it. And one week I remember somebody's name, and the next week I can't. But I want to do that. And in a sense, these verses are my motivation. To welcome somebody is about more than just saying hello. In part, it's about noticing them. Often kids don't get noticed today, particularly in a setting where there are adults. And there are lots of other people who don't get noticed, but it's partly about noticing the other. But it's also an invitation to a relationship, isn't it? When you know somebody's name, it's kind of like you're in a relationship with them. It's an ongoing invitation to belong, to friendship, to walk this journey together as brothers and as sisters. It's an act of inclusion. We've got that up on our wall. Include selflessly. We see it there. We see it there every week on our wall. And there's a you know what it's like. You have a word, and behind the word there's a whole lot of meaning. Include selflessly. And I think these verses are partly about that. It's about being a community that is marked by mutual service, compassion and care for those who are struggling. Whether that be their own fault or somebody else's fault. We treat people differently if we think they've got themselves in a mess and it's their own fault, don't we? Than if they're a victim in inverted commas. We're not to make that judgment or not to change how we treat people. It's about being a community where everybody is valued in their uniqueness. There's no two of you the same. I think of you and I think about different things. You've got different skills. You've got different weaknesses. You respond to different things. You laugh at different things. Not generally my jokes, but good job. but we're different. And in that uniqueness is in part our value. A community where everybody is valued and empowered to be the best that they can. The best person, the best version of you that you can be. The world needs the best version of you that you can be. It's about being a community with friendships that cross, all the divisions and the borders we have in human society. Even if we're not aware of them, old and young, rich and poor, whatever, male and female sometimes. Being a community in which friendships cross those divides. I'll never forget, many years ago, in church I was in membership then, there was a little girl called Esther who was probably about 7 at the time. And she had a birthday coming up, and I asked her, well, what are you doing for your birthday, Esther? And she said, I'm having a big party. And I said, that's great. And who have you invited? And she said, well, I've invited my friends. And I said, that's great. And who are your friends? And she went through half a dozen of the children from school, and then half a dozen adults from the church. They were her friends, and she wanted them at her party. I've never forgotten that. And obviously, there are all sorts of safeguarding issues that we're aware of that we weren't maybe even back then around children, but still that idea of friendships that cross the generations or whatever. Friendships which cross borders, and the fact that there is no pecking order. And like our values around the wall, we're not there yet. These are aspirations. These are what we are, the direction of travel of us as a community. We sometimes miss the mark. We sometimes get it wrong. But we were made for cooperation, not competition. We are made for community, not individualism. We are made to look out for each other, not just for ourselves. We are made to lift each other up, not put each other down. There's a lot of that around at the moment, isn't there? Putting others down, particularly those you don't agree with. We are made to lift each other's up. And apologies for putting graffiti all over the walls of the church. Luckily, I can wipe it all out. Whoever welcomes one such child, one such person who is overlooked, one such person who is vulnerable, one such person who is seen of as somehow the least in the world, the ones who are different to us, the ones who perhaps make us feel awkward, the ones who maybe have experienced rejection at the hands of the church. Lots of people out there who feel like they've been rejected by the church. They are to be especially cherished and honoured. Jesus says, as we welcome the most vulnerable members in society, the most vulnerable folk, we welcome him. And if you do not welcome them, and if you do not make them, and if you make it clear that they're unwelcome, and I think that's actually what this verse is really getting at. The second verse, you do the same to Jesus. When you turn somebody away at the door, I can't imagine we would ever do that. But you turn away Jesus. When you write somebody off in your mind, you're doing the same thing, which is an awful thing to do. We lift up the so-called least of these so that when we come together in worship, when we come together in service, when we come to the Lord's table, we come as beloved siblings, as children of the King together, in which there is no pecking order. We are equally sons and daughters of the King, equally loved. I don't know if you've come across St. Lawrence, not Mr. Trim, but this guy, St. Lawrence. Anyone heard of St. Lawrence? St. Lawrence was born in 225 AD. He became a deacon in the Roman Church at a young age and was responsible for the caring for the congregational's property. During one of the persecutions that affected the early church, that in different times persecutions kind of rose and fell a bit. During one of the persecutions, he was arrested. The officer demanded that Lawrence arrange to hand over all the wealth of the church. Lawrence replied that the church was indeed rich. I will show you a valuable part, he said, but give me time to make arrangements. And he was given 3 days. And after 3 days, he gathered together a great number of the blind, the lame, the maimed, the orphan, beggars, widows, paupers from the back streets of Rome. And he put them in rows. And when the officer arrived, Lawrence said, "These are the treasure of the church." These are the treasure of the church. May we be a church that treasures those the world overlooks or rejects. May we be a church that treasures each other as gifts of God. May we be a church that looks out for each other and lifts each other up. And may we journey together as friends in the presence of Jesus to make his kingdom known here on earth as in heaven. Amen. Amen. Let's just be quiet for a moment. Reflect on whatever's particularly spoken to you this morning. Maybe there's somebody who you kind of look down on without even meaning to. And you need to change. Somebody you've rejected, maybe.